Hey everyone, this is Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to a brand new episode of Say Hello to My Little Film.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
That's right, everyone. We are back for a brand new episode of Say Hello to My Little Film. But before we get started, Ray, why don't you tell everybody what it is we do here?
What we do with Say Hello, Rob, is one of us, and it's me this month, we introduce a movie that we love to the other, to you, and it's a movie you've never seen. I'm going to try and see if I can get you to love this movie as much as I do. I hope so.
That's right. We call that our fresh perspective on a retrospective review, and you've been on a pretty good streak, though.
Yeah,
a really good streak. Let's be honest.
I've been picking some classics that I've just had to expose you to. I haven't really pushed you too much. This movie is another classic. I'm staying down that path. I mean, it's been fortuitous for me.
Okay.
But
You're giving us credibility because I'm taking us off into the weeds, into the weird.
No, you give us credibility just with a different crowd.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But I think I'll challenge you in this one just because of the content.
Oh, interesting.
A little
Okay.
bit. So there'll be some stuff that'll be triggering from you in some ways.
Okay. Well, man, that's definitely intriguing.
But it is a movie that I really do enjoy.
Okay, well, a classic movie that's going
is
to possibly
classic. It's
trigger
old.
me. It's old.
Black and white.
Black.
Say
Oh,
that-
okay.
But it's newer than Big Country, which I did last month.
Oh.
2 years newer. This movie's in 1960.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, well, I mean, there's a lot going on there, but before
Sure.
we get started, I'm really intrigued, so I got to know, what do you got?
What do you got? What do you got? What do you got?
Well, Rob, what I have for us this month is the 1960 movie Inherit the Wind.
That does sound vaguely familiar.
Directed by Stanley Kramer.
Okay, I know Stanley Kramer.
Yep, starring Spencer Tracy and Fredric March and Gene Kelly, all of which are a force.
I was going to say, there's a lot of great names.
Yeah,
that you just
you
said.
know I love great acting.
I know you
great
do.
acting will sucker me in. But this is basically it's based off a play
Okay.
that's based off the Scopes Monkey Trial.
Oh, now I see where
Darwinism versus the school system.
Oh, boy. Here we
Tennessee. So basically, Fredric March and Spencer Tracy play the two opposing lawyers, and they are kind of. And this is a super hyper. This is not like a realistic version of that, like the real Scope Monkey trial. There's a lot of aspects of the trial that are true that are reflected in this movie.
Right.
But this is a courtroom drama. These are two lawyers who love speaking.
Sure.
Like I mentioned, it's based off a play, so there's a lot of room for melodrama in the movie, but it's, I would say, overacted properly.
Okay.
It's like it's
Overacted.
just, yeah, but in a great way. Like part of it is like Fredric March's character is like a politician. He's a lawyer, so like the overacting suits the character because he's
performing.
It's performance art like a politician does.
Yeah.
And that's really what I think a lot of the stuff we're going to be able to talk about in this movie is like, yes, a lot of this movie deals about like religion of, 1925 and people like, not being able to accept evolution at the time. But I feel like so much nowadays, mob mentality,
Right.
kind of translates really to politics now. But it's really two interesting characters. And it's interesting that you can kind of develop the lawyers in a courtroom doc so much through this. I think it's really well done, and it's these two lawyers. They Fredric March's character, and it's not shown in the movie, but it's just referenced. Like he had run for president a couple times, and Spencer Tracy's character kind of had worked with him and was on his side then, but they're now on completely opposite sides of this.
I had that dynamic to the
So now they're older men. They've drifted apart, ideologically, and almost have this hatred toward this likable hatred toward each other. So it's a kind of interesting how they play off each other. They can challenge each other like friends, but in a very contemptuous way. It's I just love that dynamic. The mob mentality stuff is always an interesting. Obviously there's a lot of theology type issues that it's touching on as well. So I don't know. I really enjoyed the movie, and I'm interested to have you experience it.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for this. Everybody that's in it is fantastic. I actually recently watched Fredric March in I Married a Witch, which is kind of like a fun, like I told you in rec section, it's a little screwball comedy.
Yeah.
So it's it's kind of fun. Going to be fun to see him in something a little more serious for this episode. And obviously Spencer Tracy is a legend, living legend.
Yeah.
Gene Kelly is literally a god.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to singing and dancing.
Well,
So,
he had a great
not doing that, I imagine, in this movie though.
no singing and dancing, but he does speak very poetically at times because he's a writer. He's a famous writer in this movie.
Okay.
And I think Gene Kelly. I'm actually looking at a poster of Gene Kelly on your wall.
That's true.
Gene Kelly had a quote when they were talking about this movie because he was kind of nervous about this movie because the cast is so big.
Right.
And they're like, he kind of said, hey, from Fredric March, he learned so much about acting from him because he's such a great actor. And then people are like, well, what did you learn from Spencer Tracy? He's like, I couldn't learn anything from Spencer Tracy in this movie because it was so iconic what he was doing. It was so unreachable for me that I couldn't even try to even mimic anything he was doing. But I did learn a lot from Fredric March. Yeah.
Well, no, that's all. It's great. This all sounds really awesome. Sounds like you might be knocking another one out of the park, but we got to find out. We got to find out, which is what we do. So Ray and I are going to take this time to go and check out Inherent the Wind. Inherit, yes. Not Inherent the Wind. That sounds odd. Inherit the Wind. And we recommend that you do the same. If you've ever seen this movie or if you just want to revisit it, by all means, go and do that now. Come pause the podcast and then come back and find out if I love this movie as much as Ray does.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. You may be also watching the film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching the film. They'll be right back when they're done watching the film.
All right, everybody, we are back from watching Inherit the Wind. Rob, I told you to be ready for some big performances. Were you disappointed?
No. You were absolutely right. There were definitely some big performances.
Lots of screaming, lots of yelling. Yeah,
it's a courtroom movie.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely a courtroom movie. And they do a really good job of setting up these three men. Because, even though Gene Kelly's character is not part of the trial per se, he's intertwined enough to, I think, really encompass a viewpoint of the trial.
For sure.
Which I think is effective and it does a great job. But it really does center around the two main people, for sure, which is Henry Drummond and Matthew Harrison Brady.
Ex-friends,
exactly. Or in fact, Henry Drummond had campaigned for Matthew Harrison Brady as when he was running for president. So there's that, that kind of stuff, known each other for 40 years and all that kind of stuff. Which, so I think that adds kind of an interesting element to this movie because, so much of it is built on this idea of the case and, people being able to believe what they want to believe and all of this kind of stuff. But I feel like there's also this layer of friendship between these two men that kind of overlays everything. Yeah. Maybe in an intended or unintended way. And I think that that's kind of why the movie ends up where it does, where you have this, the conversation between Spencer Tracy and Gene Kelly in the courtroom at the end. And it kind of sparked a question in my mind.
Ooh, we love questions.
So I wanted to pose this question. And obviously you're recommended this movie, so you may already have an opinion on this, or this is something we might have to discuss. But is Matthew Harrison Brady actually a pitiable character? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I feel like there's certain elements of it. Maybe they're trying to push you to that by the end. In that, especially with some of the stuff in the scenes right at the end. And not even necessarily redeemable. But like more like, do you pity this man about where he is in his life and everything that he's kind of doing in this movie, this detrimental stuff? Can you hold it against him, or do you pity him instead? And I think that's kind of where that conversation between Hornbeck and Drummond lies in certain degrees.
Sure.
but also, obviously there's a broader point, as far as the trial itself, and we can talk about that. But for me, talking about the characters themselves, that question was kind of burning in my mind, is like, do I actually pity Matthew Harrison Brady by the end of this movie?
I think that's a great question. I'd be really interested to hear your answer. I think if we try to work our conversation in that direction, I think that would do us some good.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Let's see. Is Matthew Brady redeemable? Or I'm not sorry. I keep saying redeemable, but it's not. Yeah,
it's not redeemable.
I wasn't redeeming like as a character. Yeah.
I'll already tell you that now. I do not believe he was redeemed by the end.
Dying isn't enough. You don't get pity just for dying.
Exactly.
But that situation that he found himself in. So you mentioned it's a courtroom movie, and I gotta say, to me, it's one of my favorite courtroom movies, and I think that, at least to me, every courtroom movie forever is gonna kind of always be compared to like A Few Good Men.
Sure.
Because you gotta have that scene.
You
gotta have that scene when people are on the stand. Like, you've got to get them in the crosshairs and do it.
Right.
My cousin
you can't
Vinny's,
handle the truth.
Yeah,
you
got to have like I can't handle the truth moment. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where I think my cousin Vinny's has like a bunch of many of those, but it's a comedy, so it's different. But it does have that with like every person he puts on the stand. He kind of traps them in their own conversation. So you've even like I think of A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey, like his speech to the jury at the end just kind of grab you. Got to have that moment they grab. And I think this movie has it multiple times as well. I think every time Henry Drummond gets up there's something where he is just standing on his soapbox against everything that seems wrong and piling up against him and unfair. And I think all of those moments hit for me. So sometimes, I think in a movie, especially with today's audiences, we need action pieces. Like even our courtroom dramas, there's action set pieces in the middle of the courtroom drama where the lawyer's getting chased down, they're going to get taken out by the mob, by somebody's paying for something. Like, we need action. This movie has no action.
No.
This movie's all about the dialogue. It's a play. You know? So this movie's all about the dialogue.
And that's fair. Yeah. And it does feel that way, especially in the courtroom scenes, because of, I think that very thing. You're right. There's not people running in and out, running in and out of the courtroom trying to hunt something down. Yeah. Right. Well, there's definitely no danger or anything like that. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I guess there's a mob of townspeople, but it's more background. It's not real. But but I still think the movie doesn't ever drag or anything. Like, it doesn't need action. This movie, I think, is so effective in the courtroom scenes. They're doing such a good job of like hitting their metaphors, their themes in every conversation. What do you think about it? Does it rank up, or no spoilers, but like, how do you feel like they handled the courtroom scenes?
I'd say it probably holds up pretty well, to what that standard that you would have in your mind for a courtroom drama. I think it's almost like a dance at times, especially with the dialogue. When you're whenever the whoever the witness is on the stand, and how they manipulate them, and I use that word not necessarily in a negative way, just you're trying to get to a certain end, you're trying to prove your case, so you have to manipulate these people on the stand one way or the other, right? And I think, and especially, I think there's a level of frustration in this movie that maybe I haven't necessarily felt in another courtroom movie, because the court felt so biased.
Yeah.
Like right out of the gate. You know what I mean? Where it's like, he couldn't even call witnesses to the stand. Like, he had, half a dozen witnesses. Right, half a dozen witnesses, and he can't call any of them because it's against the law to even mention the word science, it seems like in the state. So I think that in and of itself almost comes off to like as a level of absurdity. Now, granted, that's from a modern lens, but I still feel like that, as a viewer, when I'm watching that, I'm just like, this is just
what
ridiculous.
It was the trial wasn't about the legality of the law.
Right.
So anything that was going to challenge the legality of the law wasn't admissible, because that's not on trial. What's on trial was that, did he break the law?
Right.
So, but Brady's like, this is a bit. I'm thinking about the Supreme Court case down the road, Drummond,
and that's true.
Like, I'm talking about this law is unjust, but their point of view was that wasn't what was on trial, so it couldn't be discussed.
Yeah.
Which was obviously just manipulating semantics to fit your case.
Right.
But everybody was in on it except Drummond.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like some movies kind of dive into the jury process and all of that, and it started there with this movie. They went all the way back to the jury selection process. It was just a couple of them, but still kind of got a taste of how contentious it was just to even pick a jury because of this, kind of situation. And to be fair, I imagine, in some regards, like, and again, this could be a generational thing or whatever, where the court proceedings felt different,
Mm-hmm.
in this as to something as like a Few Good Men, where it did seem, I don't want to say quaint because that's not right, but you know what I mean, kind of like this southern or just small town justice, where it seems like we're kind of making up the rules as we go along. You know what I mean? That like that kind of thing, and it felt a little less. I guess strident, or you know what I mean, like or straightforward.
I kind of feel like you get some of that in like To Kill a Mockingbird. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair. And that's true.
And it's a funny fact, like same courtroom.
Really?
Same courtroom as To Kill a Mockingbird.
Well, I mean, when I get in the studio days, you had the one set, and you're like, I'm going to shoot everything on
It'll look good.
Shooting everything on this set, just shoot it from a different angle or put something else.
One thing I really loved about that, picking the juror, like it's a pretty quick scene, but where they're going through that last person that ends up being the 12th juror, Drummond is like, he's trying to prove that the guy isn't religious, because obviously that would benefit him.
Right.
But he's also trying to prove that the guy isn't like a Darwin,
an atheist, or a Darwinist or whatever.
So he's, and like he's trying to do both. He actually wants the most impartial jury. He doesn't just want somebody that's going to fit his agenda.
Right.
And I think that just kind of shows you the person that Drummond is right off the bat.
That's fair.
Compared to Brady, who Brady is like, he needs a win. Right? Yeah. He's got to be flamboyant. I love the line, after he goes on one of his Howard, he's like, glad you didn't make a big speech.
Right, exactly.
I think it's just their contrast of the two characters in so many moments is really well played.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let's step back for a minute from the court, because so much of the movie is spent in the courtroom, but I think there's a lot of build up to it as well, because you're right. Like let's talk a little bit about the characters. The big question is Matthew Harrison Brady a pitiable character or not? And I think to really kind of get into that mindset of answering that question, we need to talk about the three big main characters. So we got Henry Drummond, Matthew Harrison Brady, and Hornbeck. And I think starting with Matthew Harrison Brady, there is I thought it was very interesting about the idea of celebrity, because I feel like we deal with that a lot now, and especially with and even into politics, and stuff like that, now, where it's lawyers, where like a lot of this stuff, there is like this celebrity culture, and I do feel like there is something like that here with this Matthew Harrison Brady character, almost to the point of being like I'm trying to think of like a religious leader. You know what I mean? Sure. I don't want to say a cult leader per se, but you know what I mean? Like this figure that all of these people are kind of basing their faith on. And it's just a man, as we kind of, find out throughout the course of this movie. But I do find it interesting, like kind of his reception into the town. It's like they threw the man a parade. Right. For him to show up, and he comes and
made him a temporary colonel.
Right, made him a temporary colonel in the state militia or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the carpet that they roll out for this man is so interesting. And part of me is like, did they do it because it's him, or it's because of the cause he's fighting? Right. And I'm not sure which. What do you think?
I don't know either. I think it's both. I think it's also, to me, interesting as telling is that Brady as a character didn't decline all that. He never was like, oh, this is too much. This is like a little over the top. Yeah. Like this is perfect. He loves this. This is all right up his alley. At the end of the parade, he makes, one of his big giant speeches. Right. And so he's, he accepts the colonel.
Right away.
It's very interesting. I do think they throw him all this parade and stuff. He is a celebrity, like you mentioned earlier. He's run for president multiple times, but I think he is the man that's going to win their cause. Right. He's the man who's going to make them look right. Yeah. Well, I think people love to follow that.
Yeah, and they even say if it's good enough for Brady, then it's good enough for me. Right. And it's like that's such an interesting phrase based in that moment.
Song, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because that's what I mean, and it's like they're giving up their freedom of thought in that moment.
Well, sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like you said kind of earlier on about setting up the characters and getting everything established. I think that's a great way for them that they did that by kind of showing that this kind of mob mentality was already brewing. Right. When he was coming to town, and it was like whatever he says goes. Yep. You know what I mean? Like I don't even know what I believe anymore, but whatever he tells me to believe, I'm going to believe.
We definitely see that in the real world.
We definitely see that in the real world. So and the showman aspect of it, being such an important part of the Brady character throughout the movie. Like you kind of mentioned earlier about the idea of like, oh, I'm glad he didn't make a speech, because the man is constantly making a speech. The man never shuts the hell up.
He just wants to be heard. He just wants to be seen as smart. And
or just have the last word or whatever.
But I do think too, like as you mentioned the song, when they say if it's good enough for Brady, that song that starts the movie, the name isn't Brady, but the name is all these different like religious figures.
Right.
So I think them so quickly subbing in Brady for that religious figure is meaningful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they've put him on that mountaintop, or that
they put him on a pedestal
right away.
Exactly. And they complain of idolatry, yet they're putting Brady right on a pedestal, like right out of the gate. Yeah. So it's I think the hypocrisy of it is pretty apparent, pretty early on.
Well, yeah. I mean, that hypocrisy with mob mentality in any situation is always outstanding. I mean, in one hand, they're talking about you're our savior, the cause for the religious. And then when they're like, Drummond's going to be the other lawyer, and like, we'll hang him, we'll kill him. We won't let him in.
Devil himself. Because he's like,
murder shouldn't be your first go-to if you're this, like, decent person, I guess. But
you would think. But, okay, so then his opponent, Henry Drummond, is he's called an atheist a lot in this movie.
Atheist, agnostic,
right, whatever, and which those two things aren't the same, but
well, nobody knows what he is. That's why.
Exactly. Like by the end, I'm not even necessarily sure I know what he is by the end, but I don't know if that's.
And it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? Because that's not the point for him. It's the principle of being able to believe whatever he wants to believe, to be able to think freely. Being in this country, that's what the Constitution is supposed to allow.
We don't have to all think the same. It's kind of what the movie's trying to tell you a little bit, right? It's okay if somebody thinks different than you. Listen to them. Maybe you'll learn something. It doesn't mean it'll change everything you believe.
Right.
Just to hear the other side of the argument.
Right. And so obviously he is seen, you're right, as a heretic, pretty much, more or less. And I think I'm sure we'll touch on Bert, the man that this kind of the whole case revolves around. The
Screw Bert.
Right. They really are so quick to throw heresy at these men. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're a heretic. You're believing the devil. Blah blah blah. And it's like, and it's when you get in that kind of mindset, especially for something like this, you're right. Like, it goes so quickly to death. Like, we have to kill it. We have to stamp it out. You know what I mean? There is a level of violence to that, and it's just inherent in those words, in that belief. So that is kind of set up very much off the bat, because the crowd does seemingly want to kill both men.
Right.
You know what I mean? In one way or the other. Bert and Drummond. So and it obviously Drummond handles it a little better than Bert. One, because Bert grew up in this town.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. He knows these
people. He's known most of these people all of his life, I'd imagine. And to have them turn on him in such a vehement way, just, obviously has to hurt something awful.
Yeah, and he also then sees his fiance get caught in that crossfire as well.
Well, her father's the Reverend, which we'll touch on that too. But so that's obviously another added layer to this whole,
Yeah, but there's so much more weight when you know that decisions you're making are affecting the ones you love, and that question that he's faced with, like, should I continue this trial? Like, should I just, for Rachel's sake, just throw it all away?
Right.
It's a tough, it's tough when you really put yourself in those shoes. And Bert, pushes through, dragged through at times, but I think for the better. I really like how they use Rachel. If we can pivot to Rachel real quick, not to get off Bert. Bert's kind of flat for the most part.
Well, yeah.
He's just kind of a bystander.
Well, that's true. And I
Rachel's way more interesting.
No, absolutely. But before we get to Rachel, let's finish the triad, because I think the triad of the movie finishes off with Hornbeck and
Gene Kelly,
right? Which is Gene Kelly, who is phenomenal, and not necessarily a type of character you're typically seeing Gene Kelly as.
Yeah.
He is a song and dance man. You see him as the dancer. So this is something completely different. And so I think there are three levels that these men, or three elements that these three men kind of inhabit. So Spencer Tracy, Henry Drummond, kind of he inhabits that all men should exist as their own selves.
Yes.
And they should be
allowed to think.
Right, be allowed to think what they want to think. And Matthew Harrison Brady sees humanity as only valid in his point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So through his religious Christian lens, that is it. He only thinks
correct.
humanity should enlist.
Everybody should do that.
Right. And then you have E.K. Hornbeck, who doesn't believe in humanity at all. He just thinks all men are irredeemable and it's all crap and it's basically just the folly of man. He's almost like the comedian in Watchmen.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Where it's like it's all just a big joke, really. So I think that that triad carries the movie in such a big way because that is really the 3 points of view that you're kind of wrestling with through this case.
Yeah.
And the thing about Gene Kelly, which I think is also interesting, and this could be just because it was Gene Kelly, is he is a very magnetic person.
Absolutely.
So for being a pure cynic, because I don't believe Spencer Tracy is a cynic in this movie. I don't think Henry Drummond is a cynic. I think E.K. Hornbeck truly is a cynic.
Yes.
And his dialogue is great. Being a newspaper man, he's got a lot of great
way with words.
Way with words, exactly. He's got so many. There's a lot of memorable lines in this movie.
Do you have a favorite for EK though? Because he just everything he spits out is a one-liner, and it's like you said, it's all very negative. But I think you're blinded by Gene Kelly as an actor for so long in the movie that you don't like. It's not clear, I think, right away that Gene Kelly is this horrible cynic because he just delivers these really kind of mean lines, but with such a smile and magnetism that you're almost like, it's funny at first. You know what I mean?
Well,
but it's just when it's consistent throughout the whole movie, like, oh wait, you just don't believe in humans can never do anything right.
Sure, it probably maybe
I'll tell you mine.
I think mine is probably the line where the lady asks him if he has a warm place to stay.
Yeah.
Like a nice warm place to stay, and he's like, I did, but then I came here.
Yeah.
Like that one.
Come here.
Yeah. I think that one was pretty great.
Yeah. I love his line when he's like, I'm admired for my detestability, and then he's talking with Rachel, and he's like, I may be rancid butter, but I'm on your side of the bread. I'm on your
side of the bread. I have that one too.
That's a good one.
Yep. I may be rancid butter, but I have another good one. That one's Yeah. I have that one written down as well. So that's probably number 2. That would be number 2.
But yeah, Gene Kelly's great though. He like I said, it is a character that you really almost feel sad for in some ways because he's never going to be happy.
Right.
But Gene Kelly pulls it off where he is, I think, for me, most of the movie in the protagonist side.
Yeah.
But really, he's kind of not.
And it's true, and he's constantly making fun of these people, which is understandable, and I think that can kind of come back to the main question at the end, the pitiable element of Matthew Harrison Brady, because I think that he represents these people as well. Like like you were talking about the redeemability. If these people would be redeemable at the end of this.
But at first, to just sticking on EK for a second, it's like he is constantly making fun of these people. He's very rude to them, but they're also really rude to him.
It's true.
So at first, it just kind of feels like maybe it's a defense mechanism, even, or not even a mechanism, but like he's just like, you throw a shot at me, I'm gonna throw a shot at you. You say you're gonna kill me, I'm gonna say you're an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, but again, when you watch the whole course of the movie and you see his character interact with all these different situations, you learn it is deeper than that.
Right. Well, it makes me think of another line that I love. So it's so hard to choose. So this one could also be a favorite. And it's so subtle, but it's so great. Is when he's eating the apple and he tells, I think it's Rachel, like, this isn't from the tree of knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I think like that was, kind of a funny little jab.
Yeah, at the town.
At the town. Yeah. Right, exactly. Like, you don't want to know. We don't want knowledge. I know you don't want knowledge, so don't take a bite of this apple. Right. Or this isn't from that, or that kind of thing. So, yeah, but the cynical element of it, too, and this is kind of something that we talk about a lot in modern times, is the idea of the media using people for stories. Mm-hmm. So, you have to obviously look at that lens throughout this whole movie. Is Hornbeck just using Bert in this situation for a headline?
Right.
Which he's, accused of multiple times. Right. And you can't help but think, yeah, he probably is to a certain degree.
Yeah, to a certain degree. He is to a certain degree. I mean, the Baltimore Herald or whatever is paying for Drummond services and, is organizing all these things on Bert's behalf to even give him a shot at a fighting chance.
Right.
And there's definitely some self-interest in that.
Right. Exactly. So there's a bit of that using of people. Yeah. Now let's pivot to Rachel, because she is used a lot through this movie as well. So let's pivot a little bit to Rachel. Yeah. So that was the triad, like the main triad. Yeah. And we talked that Bert will come up, but you're not wrong. Like, he is a little bit of a flat character, I guess.
He's just kind of like, he's, again, talk about being used, or In the real Scopes Monkey trial, which obviously this is based on,
right?
They almost they handpicked the teacher. It wasn't like this random guy doing something.
Right.
This is really the way that this movie plays out. It's really a played up version of that.
Sure.
They had handpicked what teacher they wanted to use. It was very much a choice.
Right.
Where Bert really just is along for the ride.
Yeah.
In this and doesn't really have much to contribute.
Well, and but it is interesting.
But he's more genuine. He's
more genuine. But he chose to do it because
right.
he saw the men in the beginning, when they're storming to the school or whatever to come in,
he
and
still
they're standing
taught
in
the lesson
back.
the same way.
Exactly, and he didn't change.
But it does feel like
he was doing.
It does feel like it becomes a runaway train that he's no longer in control of.
And that's
I think
true.
he even acknowledges that.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Well, and there is a bit of
it's not really
doubt.
his fault. Yeah.
Right, and there's a bit of doubt, across the board, is this a good idea? Should I be doing this? Blah blah blah, whatever. But Drummond obviously kind of pushes him, and you can talk about that. Is Drummond also kind of using him? He's accused of that as well as he's using Bert for his cause.
Right.
That kind of thing. So that's a whole another part of this conversation. But as far as Bert and Rachel go, you can feel for them too because again they're citizens of this town. They
right.
grew up here, their life is here, and it's hard when you grow up in a place where you don't feel like you belong. Mm-hmm. And clearly that is something that happened to Bert. There was an inciting incident.
Right.
We can talk about that, the issue with the Stebbins boy and stuff like that. But so you got to feel for Bert because, as I said earlier, you have this whole town that now basically kind of wants to see you dead because obviously, that's the Christianly thing to do. But and so yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't go as far as to say that Bert is flat, but I actually do feel for Bert quite a bit. And I think Dick York does a really great job of kind of playing the simple country teacher,
mm-hmm.
but with more of a genuine curiosity.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I think Bert, I think everything that happens to Bert and the past that he has lived that got him to this point is really interesting, but we never we're just told about it. You know what I mean?
True.
So I think that kind of as a character, I guess that's why he's maybe 5th or 6th on my list of most interesting characters in this movie.
Sure.
He is the one who it's kind of like my cousin Vinny, Vinny's cousins aren't the interesting ones in the movie, you know what I mean?
Sure.
They're just the ones on trial.
Right.
I kind of feel the same way for Bert.
That's actually a really great point. I didn't actually think about it. Yes, that's actually a really great point. But I think the reason that obviously you probably find Rachel more interesting is because her father is the Reverend. That does add a lot of a layer and something that you see on screen. So I get that.
Yeah.
Where, having that interaction between her and her father and the manipulation that he has on her and
tries to
doesn't anymore, with the passing of her mother and all of that. And that just the over the top acting, not of the actor but of the father, right? To try to manipulate his daughter is insane.
But I also think the scene with her on the stand where Brady really takes advantage of her,
absolutely,
is really interesting. And the space that puts her in, where you end up seeing her after that have to be medicated. But and I think that's kind of a cracking point for Brady in the movie too, where it's he has gone too far. Maybe he wants to win too bad.
Yeah.
And he just pushes her, he's just screaming at her to confess things and tell these secrets about Bert. And it just, where it gets to the point where his wife, Brady's wife, has to yell in the courtroom to get him to stop.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it's interesting because that comes after a scene where Rachel's father's the one who goes too far,
right?
Because he has the church meeting or whatever out in the field, and
and Brady has to end it,
right? And Brady's the one who ends it, exactly. And I think that
Brady's actually the one that uses the quote "inherit the wind."
Right.
It kind of a jab at the father in a way.
Right.
I think.
Yeah, because he's all out there fire and brimstone. You got to strike down the sinner. He's damning his daughter, anybody who associates with Bert and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And you're right. And then Matt's the one who comes out there and gives him the quote about inheriting the wind and all of that. So it's obviously a great turn to watch Matt go from that moment to going too far himself in the courtroom, and with Rachel as well, because obviously that's what had happened at the meeting. So first the Reverend goes too far with Rachel, and then Matt goes too far.
Matt gets her trust a little bit. hears some things about their past, and then right away uses it against her. And it's interesting, like, was that his plan? Maybe clearly not that night when he was talking to Rachel. Did he plan on, like, was he digging for evidence against her? I think he genuinely was saving her from her father.
Yeah.
But when he put her on the stand, did he mean it to go that far? Was he always, like, when he heard the information and he had this plan to put her on the stand, was his plan to always trap her, or did he just get caught up in the moment? It's hard to say.
Yeah,
because he gets lost
probably,
in it.
I mean, that's
he
not
does
untrue.
get lost in
that's
it.
not untrue, but I do think that was part of his plan, because I think for Matt, by that point, anything to win was the right move. You know what I mean? Because he even said, like, I'm helping you. You know what I mean? Like, this is going to help. You need to get this all out. You know, like that kind of thing. I think that is kind of where you get blinded by your cause.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they always, through this whole movie, they're like, oh, Henry Drummond has a cause. He has a cause. But really, I mean, Matthew has the cause. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like his cause is just as big, if not bigger, than Drummond's.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a scene where that comes to fruition. And like I said, kind of goes to that idea of, is he or is he not a pitiable character? You know, it's scenes like this that make you waver.
Right.
You know, like, question, like, the man that he was or used to be. And we'll talk more about this as we go on, but, like, I that's obviously a big part of his character, is who he has become in the 40 years that Henry Drummond has known him.
Right.
And I think that that all has to kind of be analyzed and kind of dissected before you can, like I said, kind of answer that question.
Yeah, I do think their friendship is really interesting. You know, the relationship that Drummond has with Matt's wife is, that's where you can see what their relationship probably was as a group.
Right.
And where it is now is so different, because Drummond and Matt are just in this situation on such completely different sides of the coin that they almost can't agree to anything that they talk about. Like, they're always kind of like have some pot shots at one
it's always
another.
jabbing at each other. Yeah.
And one of Drummond's best ones is, like, when he's like, Matt's like, I can't believe we've grown so far apart, and then Drummond's like, well, that's evolution for you.
Right. Oh man, yeah. Like, I love that line. That is a great
Lots
line.
of stuff that just get Matt to, like, be quiet for a second, and that's really hard to do in this movie because he's so boisterous.
Yeah.
Fredric March does such a good job of just being so loud when he speaks and so demanding of attention.
And again, never shuts up. Like, it's insane. But the wife, so Sarah Brady, is a very interesting element of this movie, and kind of, I think,
it becomes one. Yeah.
Right, she definitely becomes one. I think it's kind of like an underrated element of this movie, because I feel like she exists so much in the background, but she does so much and says so much. So you're right, like in that initial interaction when Drummond is checking into the hotel and he runs into Sarah and they're having their conversation, and then there's that scene later on at dinner when Drummond is again performing for the papers, as he does.
Says grace. And,
Right. And then Sarah sits with Henry Drummond to have dinner, and they kind of, talk about the old days and how things used to be and all of that. And I do think you're right. I think there is a time, it's like, and it really does kind of, I think, settle very much on what's going on today, where it's like, maybe in some decades past, it was like, this, especially in politics, there's these two opposing sides, and on the, the Senate floor or on the House floor, they're very much enemies, but then, like, afterwards they would go to dinner together.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Opposing parties or whatever. Where I don't feel like that happens anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They couldn't be caught on camera together.
Right. And I think that's kind of what happened in this. It's like at this point now, it's the same thing with Brady and Drummond, where, like, they cannot be seen to be jovial together, but they clearly have been in their past.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also, again, kind of going back to that friendship element that, that adds that layer to this movie that is very compelling.
And I think that scene where Drummond is with Matt's wife, I think there's a great line in there too, where he's talking to her. He's like, you know what? I think Matt would have been a bad president, but a great king.
Yeah,
I love,
well, just so he could have her as queen.
That's what he says too. But I do think, I think it speaks to Matt too. I don't think it was
It does.
because that guy that can lead the mob who can be a really bad president because they think that they should be king and be able to do anything they want.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of person Matt is, and I feel like we see that in real life too, where people think they're a king when they're not. They're just a bad president.
Exactly.
So, like, some things just never die. Like, that personality, that you know, the people who have to have things their way, that fanaticism, those characters have been the same throughout history, and Matt's just one of them in a way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Now, as we like shift back into the trial a little bit, because I do think, as we kind of set the stage as far as their relationship goes, so much of it does come to fruition in the trial, where there is that performative nature of Brady, because that's the whole thing. Is this whole thing is a performance? I mean, it's kind of a con. Like,
well, Drummond has to call him out because he keeps saying, "Ladies and gentlemen." Drummond's like, "You're speaking to the jury, and there's no ladies. So who are you talking to?"
Right.
Because he's talking to everybody in the court, but that's not what a courtroom is for.
Right, and he always has to have his little quips, and he always has to have these, like, again, like the last word, and
acting like he's the nice guy, you know, because he says it nicely, but it's not.
Right, exactly. And you can tell that it's almost like a false sense of bravado, but I do think like, he keeps his composure more for the most part through the trial process, up until he's called to the stand, obviously, than Drummond. Because Drummond does have moments where he really does kind of lose his cool. And he has some really great...
He really goes on,
lines.
He does. Like, this movie, I think, is so quotable, but the quotes are very long and very hard to remember. But speaking of the one I just just maybe steal where you were trying to set up, but speaking of that fanaticism, like I was just talking about, he has a great line when they're arguing because they won't let any of his witnesses on there, and they're arguing about the right to think is on trial. And he screams, because obviously we're dealing with this mob mentality. He's just yelling at this point. But he's like, fanaticism and ignorance is forever busy and needs feeding.
Yep, I have that too. And soon, Your Honor, with banners flying and drums beating, will be marching backward.
Yep.
And that's hard to not feel really hard right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, and it's funny because we always talk about this, and we've talked about it in movies past. I think we talked about it a little bit in Big Country and stuff like that, where and even Back to the Beach a little bit, where it's just like we all think that things are new,
right?
You know what I mean? Like, these things have never happened before in one form or another, and we find that it's like it's repeating itself.
Sure.
And I think that that's an interesting thing about this movie, is that yes, it was made in the 1960s, but there's so much of it that I feel like still rings true today.
Yeah, and the people who watched in the 60s, the older people probably thought this rang true in the 10s, and it's a cycle that's just going to continually repeat.
Yeah.
Let's just think about like what the movie is about. Maybe pause before we get to the final beats of the characters really quick, because this movie was originally made. And this is one of the reasons why I love it, because obviously it's very, it's all about religion in the movie, but again, not everything's about what the surface level. When the movie was made, right, it's talking about it was a lot about McCarthyism at the time, and how like different viewpoints were just smothered, right? You weren't allowed to have different viewpoints, and that's what this movie is saying. This movie was saying it poises it over like creationism versus Darwinism, but that theme of just progress, ignorance versus progress, or however you want to think about it, is just universally just repeated over and over and over.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I love about the movie, is how the theme is like what the movie's about is really strong, and the theme under it is also really strong. And I love when it's like it doesn't beat you over the head, like it does. Like McCarthyism isn't ever mentioned in this movie. You need to be able to find that yourself, and then you can still do the same thing, project that to now, and you can still project those themes again, like with this mob mentality, with this intolerance toward progress.
Right.
You can easily just project that onto us now. It's timeless.
Yeah.
Arguments are timeless.
Exactly. As we've said, this kind of cult of celebrity, which was building up around Brady in this movie. That's something we absolutely still see to this day, and how that man, that person, can be put on a pedestal, put in a position that they're able to sway the minds of so many people just really on a whim.
Right.
And I think that that's what's so interesting about kind of the final battle if you will, because I think the final battle of this movie really is between Drummond and Brady, and it's when Brady is called to the stand.
Yes.
And I think that's where so much of the poignancy of the I guess the weakness and need of the Brady character are exposed.
Right.
Because it's that idolatry. It's that you're building a monument to yourself, like that kind of thing. Like, really asking yourself, is Brady fighting for the cause of God, or is he fighting for the cause of himself?
Right. His own celebrity, his own legacy.
Right. And legacy. I mean, that's exactly the point. What is he? It's like he's trying to build something for him. Again, like I said, build a monument to himself for because he thinks if he can win this case, it's like a win. He says it's a win for God for 1,000 years, but it's like, is it really for God?
Right. Because he actually does win the case.
Right. Right, and he does.
But it always feels like it's going to go to the next court and the next court. Like that's the projection this case would probably be on.
Right, exactly. But I think, the idea when Drummond gets Brady onto the stand and, is kind of like pointing to, him kind of the fantastical elements of the Bible that you kind of have, the leaps you have to take to believe every word for word detail as, truth and gospel. I think that, all that stuff is really great. And then you're kind of getting to the point where Brady basically is portraying himself as almost the Metatron, the voice of God. You know what I mean? Like God whispers to you, and like this is, I
really feel like Drummond traps him into saying
he
that.
Does,
you know what I mean? Which is that beautiful, like the you can't handle the truth kind of moment.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where he traps him into
it absolutely
and then when he's like, well, can this man have the same rights as a sponge? That's all he's asking for. That's their moment there. Which I think is so good. But it's easy when there is ignorance, right? Yeah. And I think again, like projecting that onto like now, it's like when you're just ignorant and going to bury your head in the sand, you're never going to get called out on it. But then Brady gets stuck in a situation where he's allowing himself to get caught on. When he allows himself to go on the stand, he's allowing himself to get called out on the fact that he's
self above God, really.
Yeah, like, and then he doesn't have a real leg to stand on when you're talking about some of this stuff. And it's kind of like what we deal with now. It's like we don't want to just hammer like politics nowadays right now. It's hard not to with this movie, but
I agree.
But it's it's like the Pope is speaking against the President of the United States. Well, the Pope's wrong. The Pope's wrong?
Right.
Like I thought the Pope was your ultimate supreme being for religion. Like, well, not right now. Like,
right.
It's just, you just get caught saying stupid things because you're just so ignorant toward this situation. And that's where everybody in the town's at. And after the damnation scene with the Reverend, they're singing songs about hanging Bert. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just their songs are getting more and more
I have that
overt.
Hang Bert Cates from a sour apple tree.
Hang Bert Cates from a sour apple. I'm like, it's a catchy tune, but like it shouldn't be about that.
Tune, man.
So you know what I mean? It's just, and then there's that one old lady in the crowd too who's just very nasty and screaming out and stuff. And it's like everything you're doing is about hate, and everything they're trying to do is just about thinking, and you're comparing the two like they're on the same playing field. And but to me, it's the stuff we deal with now. But you're right, Brady. So Brady just gets kind of exposed up there because he's just your heels are dug into something that's not really going to stand up when you like try to think it out like verbatim, like taking it word for word, everything word for word, and then should have won Drummond the case, but of course it won't.
Well, right, exactly. The court is biased, and it's funny. They're kind of some of the arguments that Drummond was making. I mean, obviously all of them I see and I think are correct, but one of them that I think is really funny is they said early on, and this kind of goes to the complexity of Brady as a character, that he fought for women's suffrage, for women to have the right to vote. And if the Bible's not real big on women's rights, I'm going to just say that out there. So like, I feel like that's kind of an interesting thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? For him to go
it's pick and choosing.
Right, exactly. I think there is some of that. So I think that is an interesting element of Brady that it almost kind of goes under the radar, because it's such a throwaway line. Like, oh yeah, he helped fight for women's suffrage, so you women have the right to vote. And it's like, really?
Right.
I wouldn't have thought that from this guy.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that Drummond could have really hammered him with some of that stuff in there, but obviously he didn't. But it's funny that to topple him, it really just took him portraying him as him kind of seeing himself as this kind of like arbiter of God almost, and like this,
let's talk up the ego,
right? The well, obviously hubris, like he completely used his hubris against him to trap him, but you would think that when you kind of portray yourself as the idol, idolatry and all of that, when you become the idol, that should be enough. In this movie, it seemed like it kind of was enough to kind of get the audience to kind of turn away from him, to a degree, and how that's not working.
Right.
So I'm just going to throw that out there.
That's true.
Take that as you will. But
this is true. This is true.
But as you said, he loses the case.
Yeah.
Like Drummond loses the case. Drummond loses
and
the
Matt
case.
does win it. But Matt loses so much though in that moment though, because when he is trapped, the whole crowd in attendance has kind of switched on them, where they are kind of rooting for Bert. It's not gonna win the court over. You know what I mean? But the crowd there, at least the vocal minority, has turned into at least even, I guess.
Well, the politics of it come into play.
Yeah.
Because the mayor comes up and he's like, I've been talking to the lieutenant governor. Like, we're not getting a lot of good press out of this. We look like a bunch of idiots. We need to just make this kind of go away. And he's like, don't forget, November's not too far off. So they see the sea change coming.
Right.
So which is what leads the judge to, only fine him $100.
Right.
Because he's the first, never offenses like this before, $100. And obviously that sends off Brady, because he thinks like it's like almost like he should have been put to death.
Right.
Well, like he should have been put to death.
If there's no stakes on this trial, will not be remembered. And if the trial's not remembered, what did I sacrifice all this for?
Right.
Not real sacrifice, but
right.
Well, let's talk about the destruction of Brady, though.
Yeah,
because he loses his audience, and then he kind of battles with this. What is he if he doesn't have an audience?
Yeah, I think the domino that falls. So after obviously on the stand, I think the next domino that falls that hits hard is when Rachel comes to his room to confront him.
I have such a hard time with this scene.
Do you?
I love it, but I have a hard time understanding what I feel when his wife is describing Matt.
Well, okay, so that's a great point. So I think that's kind of goes to our central question as well.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of this movie is, some of the meat and potatoes of this movie kind of lie is with the Brady character, and if he is pitiable or not, or if he's, use your word earlier, redeemable or not, or whatever. And it is this idea of, what he has become now. Does that negate everything he's ever been in his life?
Right.
So clearly at one point they were on the same team, but because they are now so far apart and so different, is it worth it to just, throw out the baby with the bathwater, I guess,
exactly.
Yeah.
And,
and Rachel feels like, yes, obviously in this moment, and obviously she feels used,
sure.
And she was, she feels used.
Justifiably so.
Right. And that Sarah understands that. You can tell that. And it almost is like an apparent defeat moment for her where she like you said, kind of defends that a little bit.
Well, she says the line like, I can't quote it right now, but it was something like, if he's wrong now, that doesn't make everything in his life he's done wrong.
Right. And she even says, like, youth can be so pure. What do you know of good and evil?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and
you haven't lived yet.
It's such like
she's learning.
It feels so shallow, when people throw that out there.
Yeah.
Like, and you can understand, sure, like there's a complexity of age where it's like, you've lived long enough that you feel like, like Batman, you live yourself, you either die a hero or to live too long to
see yourself become the villain.
Right, exactly. And I feel like this is definitely one of those moments for Brady. But, and she even says, like, my husband is neither a saint nor a devil. And I think that's something that's very important about this is he is just a man.
Exactly.
And I think that's something that people do forget in this mob mentality of this moment is that he is just a man.
And he forgot it too, I think.
He forgets it too, absolutely, 100%.
But, it's also hard too because we hear about Matt, but we never have really seen him.
And that's true.
So it's hard for us to say like this, how do I know he wasn't like this the whole time?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's hard for us to judge him the way she does. And I guess that's where I struggle with, because I think a lot of the points she makes are true. Like, I don't think anybody should ever be judged off your worst moment.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, I could agree with that.
But the sum of your parts, like if this is a recurring theme in your life, then that's what you are. Whether you're sorry or not doesn't matter. If you keep doing it over and over, then that's who you are.
Right. But she also makes a really great point. It's like when you build the monument to yourself, they'll topple it the moment they see a flaw in it.
Right.
And that's obviously what happened in the courtroom.
Right.
People saw the flaw in it.
Right.
And I think that is a very true point about idolatry and even of people, and again, this kind of
human nature.
And human nature in general, but so the celebrity culture, if you will, of that regard. You know what I mean? Where, and there is a lot of people are unwilling sometimes to accept the middle gray area of people sometimes, the imperfections of people, but that doesn't mean that everybody should just get away, scot-free with every bad thing they've done. I'm not saying that, but you know what I mean.
But and even celebrity nature isn't always the celebrity's fault. I think we see that a lot today. People hate Travis Kelce. You're like, well, why do you hate Travis Kelce? Like, well, he's married to Taylor Swift. Like, okay, well, why do you hate Taylor Swift? Like, well, she's on TV a lot.
Right.
Okay.
Or she doesn't like the president.
Well, I know, but a lot of people around the NFL circles well, they show her too much on TV.
Right.
Well, she's not doing that.
Right.
So, but it's but that celebrity, you see this all the time with the team that's winning a lot, like the Yankees. People hate the Yankees because they win a lot. Well, they win a lot, so they're on TV a lot. So I hate that person. So the mob will turn on you.
Yeah.
Eventually, you know what I mean? You're going to be the darling for a while.
Yeah.
But they will turn on you, and I think that's kind of what she was saying toward Matt. It doesn't matter the monument you built yourself. Sooner or later, they're going to come after you.
Right. And when you kind of overinflate the situation, where he even says it's God himself that's on trial. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not God that's on trial.
Right.
People aren't going to not believe in God anymore if Bert won this case.
Right.
You know what I mean? Putting so much on that. But the opposite is true. If Bert loses the case, then more people will not be allowed to think, and be forced to think a certain way. It's,
right.
There is a bit of that where, if Bert wins, there's freedom to be had. If Bert loses,
and Drummond
there's freedom not to
Drummond
be had.
makes that point about the spiral you're going to go down potentially with this case.
Yeah, absolutely. And
it's too long of a quote for me to remember it to be able to say it, but it's great.
Agreed. But I think one of my favorite moments for Matt in this movie is when the case is over and
he has a speech ready
to go. And he's got I got some short remarks, and he's got 10 pages plus in his hand.
Drummond won't let him do
right,
it.
and he's he needs to go. We all need to go. And even the judge by that point is kind of had enough, which we've been dancing around this, and the elephant in the room, it is Harry Morgan, and he is fantastic.
Yes.
For being such a small role. It is great. I love Harry Morgan and everything he is in, and this is no exception. But when he's so desperate to read this speech, and everybody's just they give them the option to stay and listen, and nobody cares. All the reporters are making their phone calls.
They've all moved on to the next thing.
Right, everybody's leaving the courtroom. It's a loud commotion or whatever, and he's just hell bent on making this grand speech like it's the end of a movie, which it is, and it kills him. Frankly, it kills him. Which the heat is kind of a part of this movie, but. He just
and he's a bad eater too. If you see him in the movie, he's eating all the time, and they're your stomach's gonna blow up.
Right.
It's kind of a little bit of the King Kong ending. It was beauty that killed the beast.
Right.
And for Matt, it's more it was seclusion that killed the beast, or just not being heard that killed the beast.
Right.
Kind of felt like when he lost his control of the audience, he lost the will to live, or the ability to live.
I think that's absolutely true. But then we have the scene that I think hinges our question.
Yeah.
Which is the scene that we've mentioned already, which is Hornbeck and Drummond alone in the courtroom having their kind of tete-a-tete, if you will. After the case is over, it's just them. Drummond has passed away. He's gone. And I guess
Matt's passed on. Brady's
passed on, right. And Hornbeck is kind of just ready to dance on the man's grave,
right.
Which is understandable. Again, at this point, they have not done much to make you as an audience person, viewer, like Matt.
And he finds, Hornbeck finds Matt insufferable.
Right.
Absolutely insufferable.
Which is hard not to.
Right.
At this point. But I think so we get to the question here where, when Drummond is unwilling to kind of just, jettison Matt as, to the trash bin of history, and Hornbeck kind of confronts him and is like, well, why? Because I refuse to erase him, or Henry says, why? Because I refuse to erase a man's lifetime. And it's, kind of what we said earlier, like, is the ultimate end enough to jettison everything?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of comes down to this idea of, can you pity Matt? Because I feel like at this point there is no redeemability. You know, you had said that word earlier, redeemability, and I don't necessarily. I will flat out say right now, there is no redeeming factor of Matt by the end of this movie.
No, I think he had a chance when he was talking with his wife, but he kind of like doesn't. He brushes her aside, like, I just need one more speech.
Right.
And I think he's wrong in that moment.
Right. So I think, at this point it has to come down to pity. Like, whether you pity him or not is the only way to end with Matt as a character.
Yeah.
And, and he kind of says I guess this is where you kind of, I guess, have a hint if Drummond is an atheist, agnostic or believer, whatever, because he's the one who knows the Bible quote.
Sure.
He that troubleth his own house shall inherit the wind, and the fool shall be servant to the wise in heart.
Yeah. And that kind of pisses EK off that he is able to quote that.
Right. Which, again, like, EK Hornbeck is a cynic.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the thing. But it's
wanted Drummond to be one too.
Right. But it's funny because it feels so current. Like, this argument feels so current because of so many people, maybe in your own life, that have gone down a similar path for similar golden calves,
right,
if you will. And now you have to look at them and either, I guess, forgive or pity or whatever. And, in this moment, Drummond does. And I think that friendship element plays a big role in that.
Yeah.
I will say. But, for you, the viewer, is it enough? That's the question to answer.
Right. That is the question to answer. And, I think you did a good job saying that Drummond, Drummond does. Drummond's known him for a long time, longer than we have.
Right.
And I do think he pities him, or at least, he feels sorry that his friend died. And I think to a point of it, he understands the situation that he died in.
Right.
It wasn't just that he passed. It was that he passed at such a, I guess, low point in some ways. He, like I said, he won the case, but you could all see we all saw him struggling, to speak and scream the speech that no one was listening to, and everybody knew what it meant and what was going on when he, what that projection on him would feel like to him.
Right.
But I'm actually more interested in hearing. I've seen the movie. I've loved it. So I'm more interested, I think, in hearing what you would say first, because I want to make sure I don't influence you. What do you find any pity for Matt in that?
So, I think, so I understand Drummond's point of view, again, from the friendship element, and even from, like, why he took this case and what he was fighting for.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for Hornbeck, it was clearly like, I want to crush religion, which there's part of me that does understand that, because from the cynical point of view, you see, even in this movie, like, what it did to the people of this town,
right? Like,
what this kind of blind faith has done to them, and the cruelty that it takes them to. And Drummond is fighting for for curiosity, and so I think it's a great symbolic moment where at the end he takes the Bible and he takes Darwin. He takes them both and he leaves the courtroom because he is a genuinely curious person. He wants to know more about life. So I think in that moment, I can understand Drummond and again, his point of view on Matt.
Right.
Now, for me as a viewer, do I pity Matt? No. I ultimately find him an irredeemable, not pitiable character. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. Mm-hmm. I think he bought into his own hubris, and I do think at a certain point there is an accountability for that. So I do not find, as much as I do think the filmmakers wanted you to pity him, like, I think that moment in the courtroom when Sarah looks at him is a big moment of that, where she can see the crack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think in that moment, you as a viewer are supposed to feel through her a sense of pity for Matt. And I don't. Mm-hmm. And I think he used religion as a weapon. I think he used it for his own aggrandizement, not for any, like, spiritual use. And I think in this moment, I think Drummond is much more of a spiritual figure than Matt ever will be. Ever could be, ever will be, would have been.
Right.
So for me, no. Like, I think of the sum of the parts of this movie, and that's, that goes to what you're saying. Like, you don't see anything but this movie as the viewer. So for me, no, I do not find Matt pitiable. But how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would find him pitiable. I think I agree on most of the points.
It's a Rorschach test, man.
That
Come on.
you've said. Well, I'll say, but like, it's hard to say. Like, I think it's hard to define. But I would say that I feel sorry for him, but I don't feel like sorry for him. Like, he should have got his way. Kind of feel sorry for him. Like, he shouldn't have got his way.
Right.
And everything he's getting is his own comeuppance.
Right.
But I'll still have that empathy toward a human being going through something where I'm like, hey, man, you deserve this, but I'm sorry you're going through this kind of thing, where I guess I feel that, but I don't think I would call it pity.
Right.
Like you said, it is so much of his own making. And he had his chance, I think, the night before when he was talking to his wife, as I mentioned earlier, where she was talking him off the ledge. She said everything that needed to be said. He didn't hear it. He didn't want to hear it. He just thought about, his mind starts racing. He's thinking about the next speech and how he can win everybody back.
Yeah.
And again, how he can use his words as weapons to get everybody back.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, he loses any kind of, like I mentioned, any kind of redeemability. But really, like, any sort of pity that I could have had on you, you've lost, because your wife gave you the path to be redeemed, for me to feel pity, and you ignored it.
Yeah.
But I still do feel like, man, there's this lonely guy standing up there by himself, being ignored, making a fool of himself.
Right.
It just, I don't know, makes you feel awkward and sad for him, because he's just a man. He's just some little man who wants to be more than that and doesn't deserve to be more than that and isn't more than that, and he just doesn't know it, and it's sad.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree that it is sad.
Yeah.
But, again, kind of having
the semantics
that,
there.
right, exactly. Like, do I pity him? No. Because you again, it is his own making, and there is that. And it's sad that people can get to that point.
Right.
I think that there's that. Like, maybe like a larger grand idea of, like, humanity being able to have the ability to do this to itself is kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But for me, no.
Yeah. And I do think Drummond is just a better character, too. Like you said, as he walks out with the Bible and Darwin in his hands, it's like, think of that what you will. Because even if you think of that, all right, Drummond is a truly religious person, and that wasn't what he was fighting for.
Right.
You know what I mean? He was fighting for the sake to think,
whether
he agrees with it or not. Now, I don't think he necessarily was. I'm just saying, like, to him, what was important was that ability to think and not to force his views on other people, which is what Matt was doing.
Right. Well, and I think I say this all the time. Like, I see organized religion as a cage, and I think these two characters perfectly encapsulate that. Where Matt is caged, like, he is caged. He has to believe this thing because this is what this book tells him to believe. Whereas Drummond is, I would actually call spiritual, and those are two separate things. Religious and spiritual are two separate things. And I think Drummond has that curiosity, and I think that's what spirituality brings. That religion just jettisons, because it can't exist with curiosity. It only can exist with conformity.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a great question. I'm glad we got ourselves there and got to, I think, speak on a lot of what the movie is speaking on. I love this movie. That's why I've suggested it. It's funny when there's so much stuff in this movie that infuriates you, and that's
absolutely.
what you love about
There's
it.
definitely times it's like, oh my
again,
God, I'm going to scream at the screen.
The mob mentality.
Throw something at Matt.
I think it's such a, the movie does such a good job of showing that people, in so many situations, they'd rather be, like, mean than wrong.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not wrong here.
Yeah.
I'd
rather hang you.
Yeah. I'll hang you for saying I'm wrong.
Right.
Okay. And just, again, the acting, I think Spencer Tracy is just absolutely amazing in this movie to me.
Oh, yeah.
I think Fredric March is amazing too, and I think JEKYLL is great. I think the acting is just worth a watch every time, and I don't think it ever gets old, and I don't think it ever will, at least to me. But that's what I think, and I already said I like this movie, so that's pointless right now. The point of this episode is to find out if you would like this movie. So, Rob, did you like Inherit the Wind, and would you recommend it?
So I'm allowed to have an opinion here. I'm allowed to.
It doesn't have to be mine.
I can have my own opinion. This is great. This is what we were fighting for. Yes, Henry Drummond won. Okay.
I was afraid this movie would be triggering to you.
I mean, I'm not gonna say it wasn't. I mean I think that would be a lie to say that there were not elements of this movie that were just like, oh my god. But but in the end, the question is, did I like this movie or did I not? And Ray, you were on a streak.
Darn it!
Because this is a third movie in a row that I loved.
Oh, good.
This movie was so good. I was, again, kind of shocked how good this movie was. Like, again, 3 in a row of that, where I'm just, like, kind of blown away. And, yeah, all the performances are fantastic. Spencer Tracy is just so good. Fredric March, also, I told you, I just recently saw him in I Married a Witch, was 18 years before this movie was even made.
Oh, wow.
And it's such a different movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's more of like a funny little rom-com. So to, like, see him in this, it's like, whoa, it's like transformative. And then Gene Kelly, who I am a massive fan of, but I have never seen this movie, and just in a light that I've never seen him in before, and I'm so glad I did. It actually puts a thought in my head, which you will find out more about later. But I think, yeah, this is an amazing movie. I think it's a timeless movie. I think all people should watch this movie. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I think that there's just so much to talk about. I think we've had maybe one of our best conversations about a movie we've had in a while with this.
I can see that.
I mean, I don't know. So I love movies like that. I love movies like this. So thank you for showing it to me. Well, Ray, I loved Inherit the Wind.
Cool.
Loved it. So I have to know if you have been watching anything else that I should watch, because I feel like you're just giving me all the good recommendations right now.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know if anything I would recommend that I want you to watch. I think there's other people out there that I think would love to watch stuff. I watched on HBO Max this like 4 or 5 episode little doc called Born to Bowl. It's kind of like the NFL Hard Knocks version of bowling. So they follow like 4.
Obviously, you're not a golfer.
4 or 5 like bowlers, and you kind of get to know their life and like what living in the bowling season is like. And it's spoiler alert, not good. Like, it's
terrible.
Yeah, not that easy. You don't get paid a ton of money unless you like win. Everybody else is kind of like fighting for scraps.
Living in your car, driving from bowling alley to bowling alley.
Literally, that's you're writing episode 1 right now. So very unique people do this. So it is kind of interesting in that way. But
you know what my favorite bowling doc is? Kingpin. That's a doc, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I will say one of the main bowling tournaments, and I've only learned this through watching the show, takes place where the Kingpin finale is.
Oh,
so
that Vegas tournament or whatever.
So you see that in the show, which is kind of cool. So there was some Kingpin throwback. So I watched that. That was fun for the right type of crowd, and I guess I am that. But,
you are that.
And then I finished a show that I'm into season 5. It's an Apple TV show, For All Mankind. It's I've talked about it before, that space show where like what would the world be like, alternate universe if Russia stepped on the moon first before us, and then everything has transpired from there. And every season of the show takes place like 10 to 15 years later.
You're right.
So it's gotten interesting where like Joel Kinnaman is like a 90-year-old man.
Oh God.
And his like his daughter, who was not in season 1 of the show, is like one of the main characters. And in this season, his grandson, who obviously wasn't in the show to begin with, or I think he was just born at the end of last season. He's like the main character of the show. So it is kind of cool to see these. And then Joel Kinnaman kind of passes away in this season. Spoiler alert. But it's like, you kind of watch these people's entire life. Like literally.
That is interesting.
Yeah. Like,
I can see how that would
Joel
be interesting.
Kinnaman's daughter, she like her entire lifespan has happened in the show. Like she was born during the show and is like now at close to end of life, all in show. And that is kind of interesting to watch people's entire lifespan like that. It's unique. And the show didn't start out trying to ever do that, but that is kind of where they are. And they have almost killed off everybody that is wearing way too much makeup to try to look way older than they are. So it's not like it's an anthology show, but the show is kind of like has to have turned in all new cast because people have died out and stuff. So it is interesting. I kind of thought it was losing some legs. I might kind of be back on board because it is kind of a new cast and kind of doing something different now. So I don't know. I think I think
like a lizard shedding its skin.
Yeah, kind of. I think I will watch season 6 if they actually do keep making these. But that's it for me. What have you been watching out, Rob?
So let's see. I've got a few things. One thing I watched, I watched this kind of reluctantly, just kind of maybe just out of nostalgia. I watched Scream 7. I love the original Scream so much.
That was a lot of screaming ago.
It was a lot of There's been a lot of Screams, and I love the first one, still do to this day. It's still one of my favorite, slasher meta movies of all time. And even the second and third one, pretty great. And obviously, they've just kind of limped along, and they had found kind of an interesting stride in like 5 and 6 with some of the new characters and all of that. But because of certain other things, none of these characters are around anymore. Because Melissa Barrera is no longer in them. Like her whole storyline is gone, and I think for this number 7 they kind of brought back in Nev Campbell as Sidney Prescott, and they had some interesting. It's like they had interesting kernels of ideas, but I feel like they just didn't follow through on them the way that they needed to, especially if they're going to keep going, which I have a feeling that they are, because this movie is kind of about that in a certain way. So there was that, which I thought was, it's like I said, it's fine. It's not good. I would say it's not good. And they got Matthew Lillard back into it in a very interesting way, because like everyone's like, oh, Matthew Lillard's coming back. Like, how? He died? Like, whatever. Like they found a pretty interesting way to get him back into the story. So I won't ruin that, but so if people you do watch them, but like I said, I think it's interesting. If you're a Scream fan, you kind of feel obligated to do it, but it's a series that probably just needs to finally die.
Let some murderer take that.
Right, finally just needs to die. The next thing I watched was a series on Apple TV Plus, which I recently resubscribed to, and is Margot Has Money Troubles.
Oh yes,
and
it's on my list.
Yeah, Elle Fanning,
talk me into
Michelle
watching
Pfeiffer. I was really into this show. Nick Offerman is in it.
We love.
And it's great. She plays a college student who ends up getting pregnant, and then she has trouble providing for her baby. The father, who was her professor, her college professor, isn't a part of the child's life, so she kind of has to figure out a way to do it, and she starts an OnlyFans. And it's a pretty common story in our modern times, so I think that there's some kind of interesting elements of that. Nick Offerman plays her father, who's a former pro wrestler, so there's a lot of great stuff with that in there. In fact, Chris Jericho is in an episode because of that, so that's kind of fun. And then Michelle Pfeiffer plays her mom, who is very high maintenance, high strung, and so it's kind of how they're all dealing with this situation. And I thought it had some really good momentum. I think it kind of had a little bit of almost forced drama in the last few episodes that I'm like, maybe I could see how this will lead into a second season, but otherwise, like, some of it felt really weird and off. But I think they kind of cultivated enough with the characters that I'm interested to see what they can do with a second season, even though I'm not entirely sure what it looks like.
Yeah.
But Elle Fanning is fantastic.
She always is.
She's, oh my God. If for those of you who have not watched The Great, do yourself a favor and watch the entirety of The Great, because
it is literally great.
It is some of the best television of the last decade. And then the last thing I watched, which you will have no interest in, right?
Good.
Is because it's a horror movie. Which I guess so was Scream, but it's Bring Her Back, which was an A24 horror film starring Sally Hawkins. And this was pretty interesting. And you know what? And I take that back. You might like this movie.
I won't see it.
You might, because it's not a slasher movie. It's more of like a psychological, supernatural folk horror film. Like there's kind of maybe something in the vein of the Addams Family, like that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
You like that kind of stuff, because it's about two step siblings who find themselves orphaned, and they get taken in by Sally Hawkins' character, and you quickly realize like something is off with her. Like she has this other boy walking around their house that like nobody can really, like, why is he here, who is he, and like all of these things. And she had recently lost her daughter, which is part of the reason why she was bringing these kids in. And there's some interesting elements to it, like that I think kind of centered around grief and that kind of stuff, and guilt and family in general, and I think that there's a lot of interesting themes that they explore in a pretty interesting way. And A24 has had a pretty decent streak of horror films lately. You know, I think that's kind of become somewhat their bread and butter a little bit. And I think this, keeps right in line with that stuff. So I do highly recommend it.
All right, well, we are wrapping up with my episode of Inherit the Wind. And you know what else I would like to inherit, Rob, other than some wind?
What's that?
Likes.
Oh,
subscriptions.
Those are worth more. They're weight in gold.
Even reviews, yeah. If you guys haven't done so, please like the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, and leave us a review. If you leave us a 5-star review, we're going to read it live on air someday. Don't forget, you guys can inherit some responses from me and Rob if you guys email us at carrayrob@gmail.com, or you guys can reach out to us on Blue Sky at carrayrob.
Absolutely. And you could be extremely evolved human beings by giving us a like and subscribe on Instagram and Facebook.
Nice.
Now you can get over there, see all the great things we are doing there. If there's a comment section on whatever platform you're on, by all means, let us know what you thought of Inherit the Wind. Let's have a Darwin versus creationism discussion.
I don't know about that. I don't know how that comments would go there.
That'd be a lot of comments. It'd be very long, a lot of angry people. But we will be back next week with a brand new episode of Hello Movies, My Old Friend, where Ray and I are going to be revisiting the Charlie Sheen, Lawrence Fishburne classic Cadence.
Yes.
Which I'm very excited about.
So am I. I love this movie when I was a kid. I haven't seen it in so long. I want to check it out again.
Absolutely. Then we will be back in 2 weeks with something very special, because this is a 5-Monday month, and you know what happens that month? That means we are going to have a special Kids Edition episode with Mr. Kitty Kaiju in the studio to have a very fun discussion about a movie that Ray and I hold very dearly to our hearts, and that is going to be the 1989 Batman.
The movie that started it all
Michael
for
Keaton,
superheroes,
Jack
I think.
Nicholson, exactly. It's going to be a super fun conversation. I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff to talk about. But then we will be back in 3 weeks with a brand new month of Say Hello to My Little Film, and it will be back to me, and I've got something very special for Ray.
You do?
I do now.
Yes.
I do now. Just hear my words.
Now.
I do now.
Okay.
But it is my birthday month, so we'll have to see.
Birthday's usually not good for me.
Not good for you, but it could be this month. But you are not going to want to miss a single episode. But until then, this is Car Ray Rob,
where I'm Ray,
and I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
All right, everyone. I loved Inherit the Wind. I loved it so much. So now I have to respond to Ray, and I'm going to do it in a big fashion. As everybody knows, my July episode is for my birthday, and I typically use this to mess with Ray, but I am not going to want to do that this time because he has inspired me with Inherit the Wind because of Gene Kelly's performance. I am going to be recommending to Ray the 1952 classic musical Singin' in the Rain. He has never seen this movie. It is an absolute. It is why movies are made. It is that damn good. It stars Gene Kelly, Donald O'Connor, Debbie Reynolds. This movie is joy on film. It is about 3 silent film stars transitioning to the talkies and all the comic effects that go along with that. This movie is absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait for Ray to see it. If you have not seen Singin' in the Rain, you need to do it, and then come back in 2 weeks and find out if Ray loves this movie as much as I know he is going to.